Hey everyone, thanks for joining the channel. Today I am visiting Bandelier National Monument in the Jemez Mountains, which is north of Albuquerque and west of Santa Fe, New Mexico. It is a beautiful place and home of the ancient and ancestral Puebloan people who dwelt in the Freijoles Canyon almost 1,000 years ago. Earlier in the day, I was forced to go into Albuquerque to the Apple store there because my laptop was giving me problems and ultimately ended up having to replace my old MacBook Pro. Not only did that cost me over $2,000, I was there for like 4 hours, and so I arrived late at Juniper Family Campground, which is in Bandelier National Monument. My fear was that this is a first come, first served campground, and I was quite concerned I wouldn't get a spot after arriving so late in the day. When I arrived, I did talk with the ranger, and he wasn't sure there would be a spot large enough to fit my 18-foot camper either, but if not, I could just drive about 10 miles up Highway 4 to Fire Road 289 and find some boondocking sites. Well, given that this was in the mountains on a steep and windy road, which you'll see later if you keep watching, I'm alone and darkness would soon be here, I wasn't much interested in that option. So I thought I'd give the campground a shot, and I knew there were 3 loops, so I was going to take a chance. Here I'm pulling into the A loop to check it out, and unfortunately there was nothing available here. Some of the sites you can see look open, but none of those were large enough for my camper. Any of the sites that were large enough for the old camper, well, they were all taken. So I headed further down the road to the B loop, and unfortunately the story was the same. So by the time I got to the C loop, I was really sweating. If I can't get a campsite, what in the heck am I gonna do? I'm gonna have to travel miles up the road. Didn't know my way around. It's getting late, might be getting dark. And I was almost in a panic. So finally, I made a turn past the bathrooms, and guess what? There were a couple of sites available. Oh my gosh, I was so relieved. I took the second site next to this car. There was actually another site behind that camper that you see, which would have been better, but I'll tell you what, I was so relieved to get this that it didn't matter. And once I pulled in, I realized how exhausted I was from not only the drive, but the stress of worrying whether or not I was going to have a campsite. So it's a fantastic morning, May 7th, here in the mountains of New Mexico. Gonna hit the Frey Trail down to the Indian ruins. Beautiful day, let's get going. Here's the start of the Frey Trail, I guess it's pronounced Frey. Let's go check it out. It's about, I don't know, 3.5 miles, something like that, round trip, but you get to the ruins at the bottom, and I guess that makes it longer, so we'll see. I'm gonna take it really nice and slow. Now at this point, you may be wondering why the heck I'm showing you video of my shadow walking. Well, unfortunately somehow, and I won't go into details, I mixed up the off and on button on my camera. So when I thought it was on, it was off, and when I thought it was off, it was on, and so this is the film I got all the way down the canyon. But hey, not to worry, ultimately I got it figured out. So maybe the coolest thing about staying at Juniper Family Campground is that you can hike down the Frey Trail right into the Freijoles Canyon, the site of the ancient Puebloan dwellings dating back almost 1,000 years. In this canyon and on the mesa, the Puebloans built dwellings, farmed corn, beans, and squash, ate native plants, and of course hunted deer, rabbit, and squirrel for food. Ultimately, a drought forced them to leave for areas along the Rio Grande River, but it is so cool that you can hike directly from the campground on the trail right into the canyon, and you can do this at any time dawn to dusk. I highly recommend doing this early in the morning like I did. When I got here to the bottom, it was like I was the only person here, and it felt eerily like I was actually discovering the ancient Puebloan dwelling site for the very first time. luckily some of the dwellings are still available, and you can see where the ancients lived, cooked, and raised their families. All within view of the spectacular Jemez Mountains. Well, Bandelier National Monument with the Anazi, I think that's how you pronounce it, Anazi ruins, is so cool. You got to do it. But now I'm having a Snickers bar, gonna have some water, and then contemplating walking all the way back up. Ouch. Well, I'm happy to report that I'm alive and at the top of the mountain. I still have a mile to go back to the campsite, but the hardest part is over. Heart's still beating, brain's still functioning. Woo! That was a walk. So when I came early this morning, I hiked down from the top. Mile and a half down, mile and a half up, then a couple miles wandering around. So it was about a 5-mile hike. And I didn't see maybe the coolest thing, which is the home that's way up 40 feet high that you can get to from ladders. How in the heck did I miss that? I don't know, but I'm like, I have to do that. So drove back down, and I'm gonna go see that. And you know, I got to see the visitor center as well, so that's pretty cool too. So after hiking another half mile or so over the river and through the woods, and deciding that I was physically fit enough to make the 140-foot ascent up the ladders, I went to the Alcove house. In the sun. So after waiting my turn to make the final ascent, I reached the pinnacle and got to see the amazing creativity and ingenuity of the ancient Pueblos. If by chance you ever find yourself in northeastern New Mexico and in the Jemez Mountains, stop at the Freijoles Canyon at the Bandelier National Monument. The museum there tells about the place, the people, the culture, their art, how they lived. The ruins are just spectacular. There's even interviews with descendants of the original inhabitants of the dwellings here. It's a fantastic place. Before I leave New Mexico on my way to Utah, I wanted to at least take a peek at the Valles Caldera. It's a 13-mile wide depression created about 12.5 million years ago when a huge volcano got ticked off at something and blew its top. To get there, I have to go west out of Bandelier National Monument on Highway 4 and go up and up and up on a very narrow and windy road. Actually, I'm kind of glad I'm going up and not down. This is the first time I've driven on these types of roads pulling a camper, and I must say the F-150 with the 3.5-liter EcoBoost engine is handling this whole thing beautifully. The road tops out at about 9,200 feet, and the views and scenery are absolutely amazing. This is the road I would have had to have traveled the other night had I not been able to find a campsite at Juniper Family Campground. I think I was right to be a bit nervous about that. Along the way, you can see huge swatches of burned mountaintops which were scorched first by the Las Conchas fire in 2011 and then the Thompson Ridge fire in 2013. Combined, these two fires burned out 60% of the Valles Caldera National Preserve. Once you hit the summit of Highway 4, you descend and look at what opens up on your right. A huge meadow. Let's take a look at this. So what you see is a valley formed by collapsed volcanoes. And all of those rounded domes are magma eruptions. Amazing. A short distance down the road is the entrance to the Valles Caldera National Preserve. A dirt road leads you to a ranger station and a relatively large parking area where you can drop your camper if you want to make the loop through the caldera. Unfortunately, I didn't realize this. The road does not open officially until May 15th, and since I was here a few days before that, I was actually unable to drive through the caldera. Regardless, it was worth it. I am literally standing in a volcano. From the Valles Caldera, it was a pleasant ride out of the mountains as I made my way to Utah. Hey folks, thanks for watching. Really appreciate it. If you have any questions, hit me up in the comments. Please subscribe if you can. Until next time, everyone, cheers and carry on.